And Congressman Bradley Byrne has strong opposition to sending American troops to fight the Ebola virus. He says our military is already stretched too thin in the fight against ISIS. And Congressman Byrne joins us live right now in our studio to talk about some of that. Yesterday, you did talk with us on air about your opposition to sending troops to fight Ebola. Why?
Well, first of all, they're military troops. They're not health professionals. We have other organizations like the World Health Organization that has the training to do that job. So we're sending people without the right training or experience to do that job. Just as importantly, our military is stretched pretty thin right now. And as you know, we have this major war going on in the Middle East, and it's clear that we've got to make sure that we're applying the right resources to that endeavor. So I'm not against having somebody respond to what's happening in Africa. I don't think the military is the right way to do it.
I want to talk about the ISIS situation in just a moment, but first let's get back to Ebola and talk about the U.S. response, and that is, of course, the topic on Capitol Hill this morning as to whether the CDC has responded. And last night on CBS Evening News, Scott Pelley actually did a sort of a retroactive piece to show the mixed messages that Americans are getting about this. Do you think there are mixed messages when it comes to how the U.S. government, the federal government, is dealing with this crisis?
Yeah, I think there have been. I think that we haven't had our own understanding of the federal government right. We've miscommunicated and confused people and alarmed people, and I think in some cases we've alarmed them unjustifiably. But we do need to make some substantive changes, and I and others think we need to start having limitations on people coming in from certain parts of the world that we know have this infection going on at a greater level. We also need to make sure that we have the right protocols here. And clearly we didn't have the right protocols at the hospital in Dallas. Well, let's learn from our mistakes. Now, I saw a pretty good message with our own handling of it here in Mobile a couple of nights ago when we had a scare. It wasn't a real thing, but I was real pleased to see the way that we responded to it, so we're learning. And I don't want to continue to beat up the people at CDC for what we didn't do in the past. Let's make sure that we've got our act in the right place going forward.
All right, so this whole thing, Ebola in West Africa, ISIS in the Middle East are calling for boots on the ground. That's the catchphrase you're hearing these days. Boots on the ground to fight Ebola, boots on the ground to fight ISIS. Should they be our boots on the ground? We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
What confidence do you have that other nations will step up to the plate with those boots on the ground when it comes to ISIS?
Well, they're going to have to. We know now that you can't just have an air war to beat these people back. We're going to have boots on the ground. In some places we do. I mean, the Peshmerga, the Kurdish forces, have proved that they've been pretty effective with our air cover in order to push these people back. The Iraqi army hasn't proven so well. We've been concerned about that from the beginning. You know, they did not do very well earlier in this contest, and now they're not doing well again. So there's going to have to be some other Muslim troops involved on the ground to provide the combat operations on the ground that we need to pair up with our air. When we have that, it works. But right now, we don't have an adequate partner on the Iraq side of things in order to push them back.
Based on what you're hearing from your congressional sources with regard to how that effort is going in the Middle East right now, what we're hearing is ISIS is poised to perhaps attack, maybe take over Baghdad.
Well, we don't think that they're in the capacity right now to take Baghdad. It seems like they still are not at that level. But what we've seen is that this group continues to grow. They continue to grow just not in numbers, but in their effectiveness. And if we don't do something quickly, they could get in a position where they can take Baghdad. They're not there yet, but it's something we need to be very concerned about.
The difference is they're certainly well funded, and that sets them apart from a lot of other smaller terrorist organizations. Congressman Bradley Byrne, our guest this morning. Congressman, thank you very much for getting up early with us. We sure appreciate it. We'll check in with John with a look at your forecast.